Hello, I'm Neil Whelan and welcome to the Wesleyan Podcast. In this episode, we're looking at dentists and dental practice owners, and I'm joined by Laura Weaver and Wesleyan Financial Services financial consultant Simon Cosgrove. They'll be covering some of the key points practice owners need to think about to ensure their business remains a success, including commercial investments, how inflation and interest rates are affecting funds sitting within business bank accounts, and how investing can help beat inflation. Now, as they're talking about investing, I'm obliged to remind you that this podcast is for information purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. When it comes to investments in particular, remember past performance is not a reliable guide to future performance, and the value of your investment can go down as well as up, meaning you may get back less than you invested. Capital is at risk. And with that, let's hand over to Simon and Laura.
So let's start then with commercial investment. So what is it and when is it suitable for dentists?
Well, commercial investments use the same investment vehicles as personal investments. So they are just investment funds, usually in unit trusts, and they basically just pool money from lots of investors. So everyone's in the same pot. That money is then managed by a professional fund manager. And the aim is to maximize the financial returns for clients over the medium to long term. I find that for a lot of dentists at the moment, I know each practice varies, but a lot of them are finding excess funds are either building up in from their monthly income, exceeding their expenditure, or are already sitting in savings funds. So investing commercially could be the answer to beating inflation and achieving real returns on money, which is very difficult, if not impossible, to do just in savings accounts.
Just touching on that a little bit. So what part does inflation play in regards to business accounts?
Well, there's two parts to this. There's inflation and interest rates. So interest rates at the moment are historically probably the lowest they've ever been. The typical business bank account at the moment pays 0%, maybe 0.1% if you're lucky. Compared with that, inflation rates in June 2021 were 2.5%. So what that means is that inflation is eroding the real value of the funds. So for example, if a dental practice has £100,000 sitting in their business bank account, this time next year, if they're receiving 0% returns, then the real value of that money will have decreased to 97,500. So it's a serious risk, particularly over the medium to long term. If those funds are going to be sitting there for a while, it could really decrease the real value of the funds.
It does make sense then for at least a few practices to be investing their surplus cash at the moment. So what are the benefits of investing that cash rather than having it sitting in a business account?
There's a number of advantages. Firstly, as we've already mentioned, just trying to beat inflation and achieving real returns on the money, helping the wealth of the practice and the practice owner to grow. So the unit trusts would be invested in a fund that's in line with the attitude to risk. So if the practice owner decided that they're a cautious type of investor, the funds would be invested accordingly. And there's various risk categories: moderate to high risk, that they could invest in. So that's really important, just to be comfortable with where the fund is invested. So the first one is to beat inflation and achieve real growth. The second one can be on a tax efficiency basis. So by not taking the money out of the business and investing it instead, it could help to manage your tax bill as well as increasing the real value. So keeping it in, obviously earning over 100,000 could result in you losing your personal allowance or starting to lose your personal allowance. There's also pension annual allowance issues, which I'm finding a lot of my dentists are having problems with at the moment. If they earn over a particular amount, then the amount that they can contribute to pensions is impacted, and they could be landed with tax bills. And the other advantage is by investing it and not touching it until they hit retirement, then a lot of dentists are obviously 40 or 45% taxpayers during their working lives, but when they retire, they become basic rate taxpayers. So accessing the funds at retirement when they are in a lower tax band can be advantageous from a tax perspective. Also, another advantage is, as it's a commercial investment, there is the potential for any fund charges to be offset as a business expense as well. What I would say, though, with any of the tax situations that I've talked about, please ensure that you speak to your accountant or tax advisor just to confirm that that's the situation for you. The other final advantage is it's not just lump sums. So if you've got a lump sum sitting there, then absolutely you would invest that, but also monthly, and stopping the problem from getting worse. You could contribute, if you've got a spare £3,000, £5,000, £10,000 a month that's just building up and exacerbating the problem, diverting that into a regular monthly investment can also be really efficient as well.
That's really interesting. So what are the risks of investing compared to that of a business savings account?
I think the first thing to remember is just having a business savings account is not risk-free. There's no risk. There's a risk with everything. And the risk, as we've seen with business savings accounts and having a lump sum sitting there, is inflation. The real value of your savings are decreasing annually because of inflation. And over the medium to long term, that's the danger. So the risk of investing is, as with any investment, you may get back less than you invest. But it's important to remember that the longer you invest in general, the lower the risk, because there's times for the funds to recover during times of turbulence, such as Brexit or COVID. And also, it's important that you invest in an environment that you are comfortable with. So as I mentioned before, your attitude to risk. So just make sure, if you're a cautious type of investor or a moderate risk investor, that the fund that you invest in is in line with that. You can also maintain control with these investments as well. So you can switch funds. So if you start off and dip your toe in the water with a cautious fund, for example, and you find that your attitude to risk changes because maybe economic outlook is better or your own personal or commercial circumstances differ, then you can switch into a higher risk fund should you wish to, or even split it between the two. So what I would say, though, is to speak to a specialist financial advisor if you'd like more information or to understand exactly how it could benefit you.
And that's our show for this week. Thank you to Laura and Simon. If you'd like to know more about looking after your finances with Wesleyan, go to wesleyan.co.uk, where you'll be able to book a no obligation appointment with a financial consultant, as well as finding out what investments and commercial support are available from us. You can also find out more about Wesleyan on all the usual social media channels, on Twitter @Wesleyan, and search for us on Facebook, LinkedIn and Instagram. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button on wherever you've downloaded this podcast. But that's it for now. So until next time, thanks for listening.